Welcome everyone to Marvel-ous Movie Mondays. I'm Dylan. That's Kelsey. It's funny because when the theme song plays, I can see all the parties in the stream below, in the video stream, and so I see Kelsey get up, run around her room to, I guess, maybe open some curtains, turn on some lights. I don't know what she was doing, and then just jump back in her seat, like on the beat, right as the song finishes. So that was very entertaining. I wish you all had seen that. I wish I had time to film that, but I did not. Kelsey, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Dill. Yeah, the sun went behind a few clouds, so I was like, "Oh, I gotta put some more lights on." So I
Okay.
was rushing around during the intro, but I landed back in place as if nothing had happened,
Wow,
just in time for the
that
podcast.
was that was amazing. We are recording this early, a different morning, not Monday morning, but my voice is a little richer and deeper in baritone. But it's
Mm.
okay because the actor we're talking about is a little more soft spoken too. We're talking about Mark Ruffalo today. We're revisiting our Avengers Movie Club. We haven't done it since Uncharted came out, and we did Tom Holland. But we've done it with a few of them. We did it with RDJ. We did it with Brie Larson, Chris Evans. Tom Holland, Chadwick Boseman. I believe those are the five. Oh, and Scarlett Johansson. So we've done 6 of these. So this is our 7th Avengers Movie Club. We're making our way through the Avengers. We've almost got the core 6 done. And
Mm.
spoiler alert, we're doing another one next week. We almost got the core 6 done, and also some Spider-Man, Captain Marvel, and Black Panther. Like that's like the core we wanted to finish, and then we're gonna go into like the next like tier, and then we'll eventually get to everyone because everyone deserves to be seen, and then maybe even some directors in the MCU. But that's a little ways down the way. We're still in off season. Kelsey, are you enjoying the Marvel off season? Are you ready for She-Hulk? Because this is why we're doing Mark Ruffalo's because of She-Hulk, but it's like it's still a whole week away or 2 weeks away. How have you been treating yourself in the off season right now?
You know, Dill, we've been doing a lot of these trivia matches, and the closer we get to a potential title match, the more nervous I'm getting. So honestly,
Wow,
I've been hitting the books again. I've been rewatching movies, taking notes, all that jazz in preparation for
nice.
potentially going up against someone later on in the year. So that's
Wow.
how so really I haven't had a Marvel off season because even when we're off season, I'm watching Marvel movies.
Right. And with trivia, when you're studying, you're getting things for the first time that you've never gotten before sometimes. So it is a fresh watch every time.
Yeah.
Um, but these are 3 movies. Only one of them was a fresh watch for me. I don't know how many were for Kelsey, but we are talking about 3 of Mark Ruffalo's movies. We only do 3 on this podcast for Avengers Movie Club because 3 movies is in itself a task to watch in a week. So it's not like picture this where you have the whole month to watch 5 or 10 movies. So we picked 3 that we think kind of span his career. We try to pick 3 movies that fit in the umbrella of encompassing someone's career in terms of genre and time to see how the actor has evolved. We didn't pick any of his like really early works. The earliest we went is 2004 because that was like kind of the breakout year of movies for us and what we've seen of Mark Ruffalo's, and seems like a good showing of one of his younger works, and that was 13 Going on 30 from 2004. And then we're
Hmm.
also doing Zodiac from 2007 with another big familiar Marvel face, a few. But 2007 Zodiac, that's our more dramatic, darker film of the bunch. And then his first Oscar nomination in 2010, The Kids Are All Right. So we've got 3 films, 3, in my opinion, good films, ranging on great films. There's not a bad film in the bunch, in my opinion, but we'll get there when we talk.
Mm.
And we left out some big ones. So I was always told Kelsey, if we run out of Avengers, which we probably won't considering they add like 20 a year, um, we will hopefully cycle back, or at least maybe on some of the other shows like Picture This or something. Well, obviously Chad and I are going to talk about Spotlight because that won Best Picture, and we're going to talk about we're not going to talk about those movies anyway. There are other movies of Mark Ruffalo's that I want to visit or revisit soon. Anyway, but I implore you to check out these 3 and a bunch of those ones. But Kelsey, cool slate of movies. Let's start though at the top. This week is your birth week, so it's only fitting that we're talking about 13 going on 30.
Oh yeah.
Which, spoiler alert, it's my favorite rom com of all time. So
Wow.
I'm very excited because I've never talked about this movie on the channel. But Kelsey, you always give a little summary. Do you have anything for us for this one?
I sure do, Dill. So
Oh
as
boy.
you said, 13 Going on 30 came out in 2004, same year as Mean Girls. It was a great year for movies.
Oh yeah, great year.
And it was directed by Gary Winnick.
Mhm.
And here's my little summary for it. After receiving wishing dust for her 13th birthday from her best friend Maddie, Jenna Rink wishes to be 30 and is transported to the future. Only her life at 30 is not at all what she expected it to be.
Yeah, it's so interesting, and the thing that I always appreciate about this movie, opposed to other time travel movies, is like uh, like Big. I think of Big. He becomes bigger and older, but he's still living in the time period he's in.
Mm,
Whereas I like this one because she literally grows and becomes big, but she's in the future. So like her consciousness is replaced with her 13-year-old's consciousness, but the events are still playing out as if all time has passed. So she time travels while still having the same mindset. Like she's basically body hopping.
yeah.
It's very interesting and very crazy and weird, but I kind of love it. But
Yeah, Dill.
what are your thoughts on this? Because I don't know if I'm assuming you've seen this before. I'm not sure. Also, just wanted to mention we do have a few Marvel faces. Just got to shout out Judy Greer,
Mhm. Absolutely.
Paul Rudd's ex-wife in the Ant-Man movies. Sorry, I don't know why I said Paul Rudd. Scott Lang's wife, because Paul Rudd and Judy Greer did not marry, at least
Uh-huh.
not as far as I know. Andy Serkis, which we'll talk about, very different role from Claw in this movie.
Mhm.
And then Brie Larson, who blink and you miss it, very very small role in the background. She's one of the six chicks, I think their names are.
Yes.
That's a trivia
She
poll
does
I
have a
learned.
line though, so good
She
for Brie
does. Okay.
Larson,
Okay. There we go. I think it might be her first thing, maybe.
I
And
think.
obviously we didn't cover it on her movie club, but we're getting to talk about it now. Great performance, Brie. We knew from the start you'd be an Oscar winner. Um,
From your one and only line as a six chick. We saw the potential in
we
you for
said, "Yep,
sure.
you're gonna win an Oscar for a small drama about an abduction, and you're gonna go on to play the Marvel equivalent of Superman. Congratulations."
So to answer your question, Dill, yes, I have seen 13 going on 30. It was always one of those movies that was like in the DVD in the back of like someone's car, and you would pop into like
Okay.
the DVD player in the
Oh
car, and you'd like
wow,
watch it before
it's
the
been a
soccer
while
game.
since I've seen one
That's
of those.
that is my memory of this movie. Yeah, so I have seen this movie, so it was definitely a fun rewatch. It was definitely it like we do with most things. I feel like we watch from like the 90s or the early 2000s. We watch it in like a different lens, going,
Mm,
kind of weird, kind of weird that she's like a 13-year-old, like
right.
at heart in a 30-year-old's body. And then the one scene in particular is when she's at the bar with Judy Greer, her best friend.
Hmm.
And she's like, and her friend's like, "Oh my god, that guy's totally checking you out." And Jenna, being a 13-year-old at in her mind, goes up to another 13-year-old and is like, "Hey, like I actually came over here because I thought you're really cute." And you're just like, "Oh my god, no, don't do that."
I
Um,
see what you mean. Yeah, like
you
it
know what
could
I
come
mean?
across a little cringy, but
I
I
still thought
honestly think,
it was funny, but it's also
yeah,
just like, huh,
I
2004 comedy. Gotta love it.
yes, I think though, because of its premise, and it makes its premise so clear and like really establishes how weird it is from the get go. I think like I think if you watch this as a 30-year-old, or I'm not a 30-year-old, so I wouldn't know, but like it's I think it's more entertaining watching it older. Like I think it's still built for more of an older audience than a younger one, honestly. Like
Sure.
I think a 13-year-old could enjoy this, but I think it's almost more funny if you are older from that perspective watching it. I didn't think about that, how cringy it could be, but also Jennifer Gardner sells it so well too that I'm
Yes.
like I don't mind it at times. Like
Yeah.
she's just so sweet and innocent, but you really see the growth that she goes through because she has a tough task. And I've always said like the toughest task you can do as an actor is like playing, not like playing another actor, but like playing like I don't know how to say this, but exactly this, like another actor in your body, like another character in the piece, like in Scooby Doo when they all
Like,
switch bodies and shit,
yeah.
like kind of
Or
like
like,
that. Like that's a very hard task, or playing a very against type, but still having to like keep the same exterior, which I
yeah.
think is interesting. Like when someone's under a spell or something, if like a witch casts it on them, and it's like still them, but they're like in a trance or something. Like that's always very hard because you got to try to keep the core of what the character's physicality is, but also bring now this new whole persona and personality to it. I think it's a very hard acting challenge, and I think people
Yeah.
who just write this off as like a silly little coming of age comedy, they're missing. I mean, sometimes comedy is the hardest performance to do, is because you have to like really hone into the specifics, and specifically with this one, the physicality and just the different mannerisms. I mean, it's such a tough task, and I think she does it very well.
Yeah. No, I agree. All the performances in this movie are very delightful. Jennifer Gardner specifically, like, is
Mhm.
obviously, I don't want to say the standout because she's the lead, but like,
Yeah.
she does an
Mhm.
excellent job in this role. The first thing I noticed, Dale, that I honestly loved right off the bat were the costumes. I thought the
Yeah.
costumes were so fun. Like, we start in the 80s and like everything's like super colorful, and then we move on. I think it's like we have to be in like the
Probably the present day, 2003,
yeah,
right? Yeah.
yeah, something
Or
like
4.
that. And even still then, like, she's dressed in that like iconic the striped green dress where she's
Mhm.
drinking the pina coladas and she does the Thriller dance.
Oh,
And it's like all
that
the costumes are just so fun. That's what I
yeah,
noticed right
we'll get to
away.
Thriller. We'll get to Thriller in a sec, but I just want to talk about, yeah, the costumes. I think it's fun because like this is a movie about fashion to an extent because she works for a
Mhm.
fashion magazine. I
Mhm.
think it's a fashion magazine. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
weird because I watch these movies and so many details just when we record just slip. I forgot Six Chick name, but no, I got it.
No,
But
you're
yeah, like the
killing it.
fashion, it's a big part of it. I love movies about fashion because they very clearly care about the fashion and care about the design and the aesthetic. Again,
Yeah.
this could just be a random run of the mill rom-com, but they really put effort into making the design look nice. And I think it also informs the character again, like the choices, the fact that like she dresses in the clothes that Jenna has when she's 30, but makes it look almost 80s esque like she's used to, and the way she
Yes.
designs her hair and the things she puts in her hair. And like, I really like that too, because it's just every little detail. It's just such a good character building piece. Like, aside from the comedy, aside from the romance, like just the character study itself, it's a very interesting one. It's like a man child, but it's not the annoying kind of Will Ferrell. And I love Elf, but like
Sure.
his kind of shtick of the man child thing, like this seems very sincere,
Yes.
and I think that's what's different about this movie than a lot of other movies that are similar, is that it's not all about the gags. There are a lot of gags, but it's more about the heart and the sentimentality. And we'll get to our guy that we're talking about right down there, like, because we haven't even brought him up yet, but I
Yeah.
think that's a big part of it too, is their relationship, because it seems so honest and sincere. And when you have to kind of separate the fact that it is a 13-year-old with this older man, but he doesn't know, and I think
Yeah.
that's the thing too, is like they all know her as Jenna, who is 30.
Yeah.
And I think that also forgives some of the oddness and awkwardness, but I love those fashion choices. But let's talk about Thriller real quick, because it's like I,
Sure.
I that scene might be my favorite scene of all time. I love that scene so much because again, it's seeing these actors that are like so awkward. Like, and Andy Serkis isn't awkward, but it's awkward seeing him knowing what else he's done. Like, this is Gollum, this is
Sure.
Caesar from Planet of the Apes, this is Claw, okay, getting up and doing the Thriller and just working it. I love just his character in this, and then Mark Ruffalo, and I think that's the emotional core. I think because they could have just made it put it at 10 the whole time in terms of energy and gags and goofs and all that stuff. But I think Mark Ruffalo, because he is kind of in all these movies kind of the more like soft, low key, laid back presence, I think it
Yeah.
really balances out Jenna well. And
Yes.
especially in this number, seeing him then come out of his shell and be a little bit more awkward with the Thriller dance, but then like get into it. I just love that, because it's like you see them connecting more, because obviously there's this tarnished past. We don't really understand the ins and outs. We kind of understand
Mhm.
it's because she became popular and he didn't. Um,
Yeah.
but I love just how that kind of just brings them back together a little bit, and just seeing the smiles on their faces. Like, that movie is like, that moment is like the pivotal point for me. I love that moment.
Yeah, that's definitely, like, top, like, iconic scenes in rom-coms, like,
Yes.
ever. That's gotta be on
Yes.
some sort of top 10
Yes, when I
list.
said favorite scene, I meant in rom-coms. Like, not like, this is not beating the, the tears in the rain Godfather monologue, or like the I
Oh,
am Iron
sure,
Man
sure.
snap, or singing, well, Singing in the Rain is kind of a rom-com in a way, but like there are other movies with more iconic scenes, but in terms of rom-coms, like, this is my favorite.
No, this is definitely it. This is top of the pops. Honestly, Dil, what I love about this movie is that it has this whole other layer of, like, I feel like just reminding all the adults in the movie to not lose their like childhood
Mhm.
whimsicality, because
Yeah.
it's that young spirit, and it's that different perspective that 13-year-old Jenna brings to the table, like, especially in her work life, that ends up,
Mhm.
being the pitch that the Andy Circus goes with. And it's like, it really allows you to take a step back, and it almost reminds you, like, don't take life so seriously. And it was super fun watching this movie again. Like, it had been, like, certainly at least a decade since I've watched this movie,
Really?
for
Oh, I
sure,
I
for
watch this at
sure.
least 3 times a year. No, not in full necessarily, but, like, I'll put on the TV and I'll be like, "Let me put some of 13 going on 30 on," or I'll be
Sure.
scrolling through, and if it's on, I stop. Because like, that's the thing is, like, we nowadays, we have streaming, so it's not as
Yeah,
common of an occurrence, but if I'm at my parents' house, if I'm down the shore, and there's, like, a listing
a
of a
movie channel
guide, and
on.
I'm like
Yeah.
and I'm clicking through, I'm like, "Alright," and I get to 13 going on 30, I'm stopping. If there's 5 minutes left, if there's 45, if there's an hour and a half left, I am stopping. But I like what you said about like the way it like kind of informs, yeah, like the workplace and what it means to be a working adult, and looking at it through the lens of a child experiencing this and questioning the things like, wait, what, like, and all this
Mhm.
backstabbing and betrayal and all
Yeah.
that stuff, and that dirty stuff that happens when you become older and you kind of you become selfish in a way.
Yeah.
And especially to see what happened with their friendship, because that's what's heartbreaking, is when you find out that they
Mhm.
haven't talked in forever. When she shows up at his door and he's like, Jenna, I haven't seen you in forever. And it's like, what? Like, oh my God, like
No,
they haven't
yeah.
talked, and it's
They were
sad, because it's like,
inseparable.
because you think of your childhood friends, and like I know you and your childhood friends are very, very close still, but like there are some along the way that you don't necessarily connect with as much. Like I think
Yeah.
of my close friends, and a lot of my close friends from childhood I haven't talked to in a long time. I still keep up with some of them, but it's like it's tough, and you start to remember, like, as you get older, you have to hold on to those friendships and really make them count and make them last, and do podcasts with your friends. And that's how I keep in touch with you and Zach so often. But like, a lot of other friends, it's like
Yeah.
it's tough sometimes to make the time
No,
and get
yeah.
the time to get together and keep up, and pick up right where you left off, or catch up on all you've missed. But and this I think also reminds me as a viewer to like remember to catch up with your friends, and don't let those great memories go to waste, and leave the people who were special in building you as a person behind. Because yeah, these two, Mark Ruffalo and Jennifer Garner together, are just so delightful.
Yeah.
And I love what Mark Ruffalo brings to this, because like we haven't talked a ton about him, but like his character is really important to show the guy who we, because we've only seen these two characters essentially, and kind of Judy Greer's character when they were younger. So to
Mhm.
see like them older, you have to see how he's changed so differently than Jenna. And I think that's what's kind of sad and heartbreaking, but also what's so charming. But even he kind of loses his way in the fact that he's marrying someone he doesn't really love. And I think that's a
Yeah.
big step too, in not just the workplace like you mentioned, but like in life and relationships also. Don't settle just because you're older, like, or just don't feel like you need to do something because you're supposed to, if that makes sense. Like I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of life lessons to learn from this, and I think 13 going to 30 is a lot more profound than people give it credit for, because it
No,
is
yeah.
silly and it is funny, and they're doing Thriller and she's wearing all these wacky clothes, but I mean, it really has a nice sentimental core at its core. So
Yeah, and I feel like there's even a lesson for the younger crowd as well in this
mm,
movie too, where it's just like maybe being popular and trying to get in and trying to fit in and be in the it crowd isn't everything you expect it to be. You know
right,
what I mean? Because
yeah,
she's like, wow, I got everything I ever wanted, but at what cost? I lost my best friend, and now I grew up to be this like evil, conniving, backstabbing person who's been, selling off our ideas to the other magazine. It's like this isn't what I wanted my life to be like. And I
which
do.
yeah, I was just on that note, to be
Sure.
fair, the only part that I criticize, that I have trouble believing that anyone Jennifer Garner could ever play, would be conniving and evil. Like I just have
Sure.
no way of believing that like this character would ever grow up to be that. But hey, maybe that's just how powerful Judy Greer's corruption on her was.
Yeah.
But like in my mind, I'm like, how can Jennifer Garner of all people, and I share a birthday with her, so I'm a little like biased territorial,
Okay.
but like like Jennifer Garner, born April 17th, how can she possibly play someone mean? Like, and that's the thing, is, and we don't see it. That's what's nice, is we don't, and I love that too, is we don't see the Jenna that everyone else sees. And that's what's so awesome too, is we hear from everyone else like, oh, like I love the role, like the assistant or the receptionist or whatever, who like
Oh, yes,
is
yes,
it
yes.
gets treated well and is like almost surprised by it. Like she's so sweet. I love that
Yes.
character. Everyone in this is so sweet except for Judy Greer's character. But like, she needs to be there. We need an antagonist. What were you gonna say, Kels?
I was just gonna say, and I really have to, like, commend, Mark Ruffalo and Jennifer Gardner, and they're also, like, their younger selves because
Yeah.
it really felt like, I mean, I don't know who's studying who. I don't know if the younger were
Yeah, yeah.
studying the older or the older were studying them because they really kinda really had, like, the same talking patterns, the same physicalities. Like, I really did believe that, like, Jennifer Gardner and Mark Ruffalo could have been the older version of the 2 younger characters, you know what I mean?
I'm giving credit to, yeah, Krista B. Allen and Sean Marquette, because
Yeah.
I am very much convinced that Mark Ruffalo is just doing his Mark Ruffalo thing, and that
Mhm.
that
Sure.
little boy was trying to mimic him or
Yeah.
embody him. I shouldn't say mimic, but because Mark Ruffalo, and this is something we'll get with a bunch of these movies. Like I said, he's very laid back. But what I like about all three of these movies is that he's a different type of laid back, because each movie needs a different type of function. We'll get with Zodiac, where his more laid back nature works in that film, versus Kids Are All Right, how that laid back nature works in that film, versus this, where the laid back nature works. This is almost to show a more endearing laid back side to him, and I like that. I like how he's has a similar vibe in all the movies, but they don't always
Mhm.
serve the same function. He's not ever boring either. Like he's still very
Yeah.
intriguing, and I think that's because he's just such a warm persona himself.
Mhm.
And I really enjoy just his screen presence. I think it's different than a lot of actors we see working today, especially compared to like you see Robert Downey Jr. And we'll talk about it in the next movie. But like he takes up eats up the scenery. He chews the
Mhm.
scenery at every scene he's in, whereas Mark Ruffalo kind of just dances around the shadows a little bit, but there's something kind of really intriguing about that. And I really like
Totally.
how he brings that to this film, especially when everyone is, like I said, delivering out of 10 in terms of energy and quirkiness and all that. Like Andy Serkis is doing a lot in this movie, and I love it.
Mhm.
Everyone's
Mhm.
bringing their A game, but some are bringing it in a more over extroverted way, and I like how he's more introverted in almost every role he's played. Even
Yeah.
Bruce Banner, and that's why he was cast. Like he's supposed to be this more meek, quiet, timid, smart, soft, gentle person, because then
Mhm.
when he becomes the Hulk, it's such a great dichotomy between those personalities, and that's why he was the perfect choice. Sorry, Edward Norton, it's true.
Yeah, Dill, it's funny to me because I watched these 3 movies and I was like, "Wow, these were very 3 different characters for him."
100%.
Like, they were all vastly different, and it was so I was just like, "Wow," like, Mark Ruffalo, like, I feel like he gets slept on a little bit as an actor, but, like, he's really out here doing, like, pretty much any kinda character. But it was with this role specifically in 13 Going on 30 that I was just watching it, and I got some acting advice recently from a teacher, and she said, the most interesting thing about you is you. And I feel like that reigns true here with
Yeah,
Mark Ruffalo. You know what I mean? Because like
100%.
he's really it's just like his like it's his own like quirkiness, like as you keep saying, his laid backness, his style of talking, like everything just like everything about him just like draws you in and like
Yeah.
makes you love this character. And it's he's the reason why you kind of like root for these two people to like end up together at the end. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because he is a great contrast to everything that Jennifer Gardner's got going on,
Yeah,
which is
and you
crazy.
gotta yeah, and you gotta understand like why ultimately he does decide to be with her and change his mind and stuff. And I think there's a little bit of a difference in just you kind of have to separate yourself from the logic of like, wait, so at the end, like how does she get back to him in the end? Like what does history like how much altering history happens, like what necessarily changes, because obviously we see that when she goes back to her 13-year-old self, she kisses him, and they are so they grow up old together, but like
Yeah.
but my question is like what other alternate history does that change? Is she as successful as she is? Does she get that job at the news at the magazine or
Mm,
whatever? Like what changes? But then at the end I'm like, but that's not what we need to think about. Like that's not what the filmmakers want us to think about. They want us to think about what happened with the two of them, because
sure.
that's what we want to leave thinking about. Like we want it to be that even if she didn't end up getting a good job, or a job at all, like it doesn't matter because he's there. And I think that's what
Yeah.
the big takeaway is, and I love that. And we have to understand why that is the most important aspect of the film, and not her career, not her personal journey necessarily, but like their journey together. And I think that's what Mark Ruffalo sells really well, and Jennifer Garner, but like everyone really in this film sells really well. I love her parents too. We haven't even
Yeah.
talked about them, Kathy Baker and Phil Reeves. Like I love the scene where she goes home and they play Vienna
Mhm.
on the subway train on the train when she's on her way home, and it's sad because it's like that's where you start to see more of the blending of a younger Jenna becoming more mature. That's like really where we see her first like huge like adult crisis. And
Yeah.
I really I just love that moment. It brings me to tears, and that's why I love this movie, is because it's not just a comedy. It has so many different layers, and it is my favorite rom-com. I think it's a perfect movie. I know there are issues other people have with it, but I think it's a perfect movie. I don't care what anyone says. It's 10 out of 10 for me. I know we give our scale here, and Kelsey kind of goes by how she would recommend it as a Mark Ruffalo movie, and I know he's not necessarily the lead of any of these movies, but I think he is so good, and I think this movie's so good. So it's a 10 out of 10 for me. A perfect 10.
Oh,
I love it.
wow.
Yeah, I mean
Perfect
it's my favorite
score,
rom com. It's
Dill.
my favorite rom com. I'm not gonna give it
Yeah,
anything
that
less. I'm not gonna give it
adds
anything
up.
less.
You know what?
What do you? Yeah,
Uh, I'm gonna give 13 going out of 30 an 8 out of 10.
nice. I thought you were gonna say 13. 'Cause-
I
I'm kidding. If I could give it a
know.
13,
I
I
was
would.
originally I was like I gave it a 7, but we've been talking so highly of it, and I've just been realizing things that I've liked about it through this conversation. That I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna bump it up a notch.
And that's also my bias kind of taking over the podcast here. You're allowed to think however you want about this movie, but I think it's perfect. Yeah, there's no real segue I could get from 13 going on 30 to the Zodiac Killer. So let's
Zodiac.
just jump into it. 2007's Zodiac, directed by David Fincher.
Yes.
Big name director, some big names in the cast. Let's get to it. Kelsey, tell us about Zodiac.
I'm so glad. Oh wait, also had the director written down. I'm like, I'm glad you said it because I
Oh,
don't even
sorry.
think I wrote it down this time. No,
Yeah.
no, no, it's good. It's good. Okay, so here's my summary. In this thriller based off of true, okay. In this thriller based off of true events, Mark Ruffalo plays Inspector David Tashi, one of the many people dedicated to finding the Zodiac killer.
Nice. I like how you like spun it to make it about Mark Ruffalo at the end of the day, because honestly, this is more of an ensemble piece in the fact that like it's
Yes.
more about the three guys, and then it kind of becomes more about just Jake Gyllenhaal in the last act. But it's like
Hmm.
the three guys working together to kind of solve the crimes of the Zodiac killer. And this is the one I actually hadn't seen. I'm a huge David Fincher fan,
Oh
obviously. So
wow, Dill.
Social Network, probably the best film of the 2010s. Maybe, I don't know, that
Mm.
I would have to go back and look, but like it's heralded by many as the best film of the 2010s. He's made some absolute classics, Fight Club, and
Wow.
I'm blanking on a lot of the other ones, Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, and Seven, which is like the
Ooh.
prototype for all future crime movies, including this one. So it'll be interesting to talk about. But had you'd seen this before, correct?
This was my 4th time watching this
Whoa.
film. He's also
Okay.
done Gone Girl,
Yes, that's
The
right. That's right.
Curious
Going
Case of
Benjamin
Benjamin
Button,
Button.
yeah, and then
Sorry, I was just
Alien 3 was his first movie, which is funny because that is supposed to be one of the worst Alien movies. I haven't even seen it, so it really
oh,
goes to show your debut is not what defines you, especially when you're working in a franchise. Sometimes it just takes some more individual works to blossom. But Kelsey, yeah, you said this is your 4th time.
yeah.
Before we get into your thoughts, I just want to also bring up a few Marvel faces yet
Yes.
again. Robert Downey Jr. obviously plays a big part in the first half of this movie. And then Brian Cox, who is not an MCU face, but is a Marvel villain in another franchise we watched, X-Men. He is William Stryker in X2. The older man, William Stryker. So those are just some fun, familiar faces. But anyway, Kelsey, tell me what are your thoughts on Zodiac? Because you've seen it 4 times, which means you probably like it a good deal. Oh, and Jake Gyllenhaal, Mysterio, duh. I always forget Jake Gyllenhaal's in the MCU. But Kelsey, what are your thoughts? Because I have interesting takes, but I want to get your take.
Well, Dill, I'm a mystery thriller girl, and I
Yeah.
especially love if it's like based off of a real person.
Mm,
Because to this day, we still don't really know who the Zodiac killer was. Like, this is
yeah.
still an unsolved case to this day. I mean, we have
Mm.
pretty strong inklings that it was the guy that
Ted
they
Cruz.
were.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, him, but also Arthur Lee Allen, like the guy at the end of the movie.
John Carroll
They
Lynch's character, yeah.
yeah, where that's who we strongly suspect who it is. But at the end of the day, we still don't know. So this movie was just super fascinating to me, and a lot of great performances in this movie. It's a long one.
Yeah.
It's long,
Mhm.
but it's it's good. And I was going into it because I knew it was an unsolved when I, watched it the first time. I was like, I
Right.
wonder if they pin it on somebody. I wonder if they wrap it up, like put it in a nice bow, like Hollywood likes to do. But
Eh,
they kind of leave it open
yeah.
ended as
Well,
the case is.
and it's interesting because like I think it's interesting watching a true crime thriller when you know what's coming in terms of like I knew this was kind of an unsolved case, so the whole time I wasn't thinking they would kind of pin it on one guy. um
Hmm.
but at the same time the movie sets it up to make it seem like you're going to find out who it is. So when
Sure.
you don't get that resolution, sometimes some could say that's a letdown. It
Yeah.
wasn't necessarily for me, only because I kind of knew it was coming that it wouldn't be. But at the same time, I had heard of Arthur Lee Allen just because I've heard of
Hmm.
my like done my own research. Not like
Hmm.
I sat down and like researched the Zodiac killer, but just through
No,
reading
no,
and
no.
stuff. But like,
Sure.
and when for some reason when I was watching this movie, I knew John Carroll Lynch was the villain or the supposed killer. I knew he was Arthur
Sure.
Lee Allen. So I don't know if that tinted my perception of the movie because like every suspect that wasn't him, I just wasn't believing. Or in those
Hmm.
scenes where you're kind of like not sure, you can't see his face or you kind of hear his voice, I was like, that's John Carroll Lynch's voice. Like I think
Oh,
that kind of
interesting.
hurt for me because he has a very recognizable voice as well. And
Sure.
I think that almost kind of ruined it at times for me because I was like, because it is long. And I think when you kind of dilly dally a little bit, and this movie doesn't dilly dally, but it takes its time to like go through every aspect of the search, and some aspects are less successful than others, and some are more successful than others. But I don't know if knowing who the killer was and like who plays him helped or not. I don't
Hmm.
think it helped though in my enjoyment of this movie. I
Okay.
don't know if that's a thing for all true crime movies. If just knowing how it plays out affects the mystery of it all. So the mystery itself didn't really reel me in, but I do think David Fincher's such a good director. So like everything looks really good. Like it's a really well
Yeah.
crafted. It's well scripted. It moves.
Yeah.
It does. The thing is, the pacing does feel long, especially in the last two thirds. But
Sure.
it starts off really interesting. Like I think cutting back and forth between the kills and then them back at the office. Like I really like those scenes and how they're interwoven. I think we kind of lose that a little bit as it goes on. We see less and less kills. And I'm not saying I wanted this whole movie to be kills, but I like how different in tone they were and different
Hmm.
in style and pace to where like every kill kind of like bumped the film up a notch. Like it
Yeah.
kicked things up a notch, and then we kind of like reverted back to like, all right, let's get to the bottom of this. And now like, boom, oh, another huge thing happened, and then we're getting back into this. And I kind of like that roller coaster ride until it kind of stopped, and it became more
Sure.
about just like the end events and how everything played out. But um, yeah, I think hype has a lot to do with it too because a lot of people hype this up as Fincher's best, and
Mm.
I think just going into it with the hype, kind of knowing who the killer was, not really just knowing what to expect, and knowing it was super long, and knowing it was a Mark Ruffalo movie, and the fact that he doesn't show up in the first like 30 minutes or whatever, like I
Mm.
just think that all kind of I think my expectations were a lot higher. So when I saw
Okay.
this, I liked it, but I wasn't in love with it, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Yeah,
No,
I don't
yeah,
know what to say.
totally.
Yeah, how to pinpoint it, but yeah, that's kind of how I felt because I wanted to love it, but I was just like, all right, that was good. And I think it's also because they're trying to make it as true to the true crime as they can, obviously. So they're not
Mhm.
trying to really romanticize or dramatize anything to an extent beyond reality.
Yeah.
But then I'm just thinking to myself, like, well, then why wouldn't they just make a really good documentary about it? And obviously, they might not have the footage, so it might have been cool to do a dramatic retelling. But I always have to ask myself in these scenarios,
Sure.
would it just reading about it or like watching a documentary just be more in inviting than this, despite the talent at hand? And we'll get into the acting in a sec because we got to talk about Ruffalo. But like the stars they get for it are really good. But the movie itself, I think, wasn't as good as I had hoped or expected it to be,
Mm.
just based on expectation. But
Yeah. No, I totally feel you, Dill. Honestly, I like what you said about the killings because you're watching these tragic things happen, and you kind of realize, especially during like the lake scene where it's like the two couple who are like picnicking by the lake, it's like
Mhm.
it's silent. There's no like violence in the background. There's like in the stereotypical like kind of horror thriller sense of
Mhm.
like that fill you with dread. Like it's just like there's nothing underneath it, and you're just like watching it play out, as close to the true event, uh, you know, as it happened in real life. And it's just very daunting and very unsettling. And I
Yeah.
think, this movie feels very LA Confidential to me.
Oh,
And
okay. Yeah.
like despite all like the corruptness of the police force and everything,
Yeah.
just like that style, just like being in like the 70s. And I just love a good, you
Yeah.
know, good old fashioned crime drama. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
definitely. Yeah, because this is very much more, and I think this is another criticism I have for it, but something that could work for people who are fans of the true crime is it is very plot forward. It is all plot,
Mhm.
almost. Like I think there are almost not enough moments of just the character building to where like
Mm,
we get these. I think they're really well-rounded personalities, but in terms of their actual arcs and stories, I'm not as invested. Like we get hints that Robert Downey Jr. is an alcoholic, but they
mm,
don't go too far into it to where like I wish they had kind of dove a little deeper into it. And Mark Ruffalo himself, like he's obviously got a big part to play, but I feel like we get a lot more with the other characters that we do with him in this, in terms
mhm,
of just his personal life and his backstory. We kind of get this little snippet that he like faked a letter to like from the Zodiac to him for reasons I don't really know the reasons behind why he did it, but then it turns
mm.
out that his name was cleared from it. But like why not explore that a little bit more and see what that does to him as a detective, and what it does
Sure.
to his mind. And Jake Gyllenhaal, I think we get the most character building from with his wife and
Yeah.
stuff. But even then, I wish they went a little further, because I compare this to Seven, and Seven came out almost a decade, more than a decade before this, and that's one of Fincher's other films. I don't know if you've seen it, so I won't spoil it.
I have not.
Okay. It's the famous "What's in the Box" movie. It's got
Okay.
Morgan Freeman and Brad Pitt and Gwyneth Paltrow are Pepper Potts. But what I
Mm,
love about that movie is there's a dinner scene early on where Morgan Freeman basically comes over to Brad Pitt's house with Brad Pitt and his wife Gwyneth Paltrow, and they all sit down and have a dinner together. And just in that one moment, I feel like we got so much more character than we did in this film's 3 hours. Like I feel like we just got like so much about what their relationships mean and the connections between these main characters, and like just who they are as individuals. So then when the murders started taking place and the investigations happened, like we kind of understood the stakes for every character. We kind of got where Morgan Freeman was coming from as this older detective. Brad Pitt is this younger detective who's kind of
mm,
arrogant. And then Gwyneth Paltrow, what it means to be the wife of someone who's investigating murders. Here, I feel
mm.
like the wife character doesn't get a ton of agency, and I feel like just the three main characters, as fun as they are together in a scene, and how interesting they are as actors, and how good they are as actors, because they are really good in this. I just wish there was a little bit more of the character building than just plot, because this is very much
Sure.
plot forward. Like this feels like a documentary, save except for the fact that it is actors playing it and it is scripted. But at the same
Mhm.
time, like this could just be a documentary. If these were actors that no one had heard of before, you could have told me it was a documentary and I would have believed you, if that makes sense.
Sure.
You know?
No, I know, I get what you're saying, Dill. To play devil's advocate to that, though,
Yeah.
it is interesting that we kind of all meet these characters in like the throes of kind of just like the biggest
Mhm.
controversy and tragedy happening
For sure.
along in ever probably for these
Mhm.
characters' lives. And we meet them like the first time we meet Mark Ruffalo, like he's in bed with his wife, he gets a phone call, and like one of his first lines is like, I don't know who you are, but like you owe me a new lamp. And they're like, well, we need you to come in. And he's like, okay, but first let me describe the lamp that you're gonna buy for me. And it's like right off the bat, I feel like I know this guy like
Yeah.
right away. Like
Yeah.
I didn't need like a whole build, like a whole prologue to like who this
Right.
character is as a person. I think that just commends like the writing and
Mhm.
the acting. You know what I mean?
Cool. Yeah.
So it's
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't necessarily need like a prologue. I get what you're saying, but like yeah, for some reason it just I was not as connected to these characters. And I just don't know
no,
if
I
that's because
I
it
totally
was
get it.
it's I think it's just more of the ratio plot to character, more so than just the absence of character. Because there is character building stuff in here, but in a 3 hour movie, you'd expect a little bit more. I don't know. But let's talk about Ruffalo, because like, what do you think
Yeah.
of his performance as his character? Because it's the least flashy of the three, I think.
Yeah.
But you mentioned earlier how these three movies couldn't be any more different, so I'd love to hear
Hmm.
your thoughts on that.
So when you say out of the three, you mean
Robert Downey
Robert
Jr.,
Downey
Jake
Jr., Jake
Gyllenhaal, and him.
Gyllenhaal,
Yeah,
and him.
those are
Yeah,
the three I
like
usually think of as the three leads of this. Yeah, I
yeah,
mean, yeah, you
for
could kind
sure.
of rope Anthony Edwards in there, but yeah, those three.
Yeah, he's definitely the more, like, jaded inspector
Mhm,
type where it's just like, "Well, I've been at this for years. You've never believed to see the things that I've seen." You know what I mean? Like,
mhm,
it was just very it was, I dare I say, fun to watch him kind of be someone who's, maybe has a little bit more of a pessimistic view on life and not
mhm.
someone who's like super like open and friendly, I guess, as
Like
like
Professor Hulk.
at well, you know what I mean? Like,
No, yeah, no, because Professor Hulk, we've seen in these like in these
oh, yeah,
She-Hulk
yeah, yeah, yeah,
trailers,
yeah.
because he
Okay.
is a mentor. Because when you said like older and jaded and almost like the more experienced older guy of the bunch, that is kind of what She-Hulk is going to be. Like he's the mentor to
Yeah.
She-Hulk, but in the trailers he's like, yeah, and you're green and you can do this, and I'm like, oh
Yeah,
my
yeah,
god,
yeah.
he's Shrek now. Professor Hulk is Shrek.
See,
But
when you said Professor Hulk, I, like, just went to just, like, regular Hulk and not this, like,
no.
cartoonish, like,
I'm talking about
guy. He's
the present
he's
Hulk we're at, where
become
everything's jolly and funny. He's taking
No,
selfies
yes.
and he's at a diner and he loves his omelets. Yeah, like
Yeah, yeah,
I don't.
yeah. No,
I'm
I I
talking about
I
that
get what
Hulk.
you
Yeah,
mean now.
yeah,
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
definitely a different side of the coin to that. A different side of the coin.
No, yeah, for sure, and I just feel like the 3 of them are such good actors that they just enhance whatever the other one is doing,
Mhm,
regardless of, like, who they're, on camera with, but yeah, I really like I said, like, he can just, like, he's so versatile in such
mhm.
subtle ways that, like, you watch him do what he did in 13 on 30 and you believe it, and now you watch him be, like, an inspector, investigating the Zodiac killer, and you believe it. Like, there's not a moment of his performance that I'm going, "Okay, Bruce Banner, try to find the Zodiac killer, go ahead." It's like, no, like, he's totally just, like, this other guy now.
Hulk smash Zodiac killer. Yeah.
Zod Oh my god, I just combined their names. Zodiac Killer v Hulk. Oh my god.
Wow.
Could never.
Marvel Phase 7, here we come. Um, but yeah, I really like these performances. I think Jake Gyllenhaal is probably my favorite of the three, just because like I think he's got the most interesting personality, and it's the most interesting thing. He's a cartoonist, and
Yes.
because this guy's like a Zodiac killer, and everything's in like shapes and drawings, it's like he has a big part to play, and you start to see
Yeah.
how he gets roped up into it versus Robert Downey Jr. It's his job, and Robert Downey Jr. is an alcoholic who goes deeper into his alcoholism because of his fear, and eventually I don't remember if he retires or he quits or he's fired. I can't remember necessarily. I think he retires. I don't know, but he retires very early, to the point where like he's just out in a trailer drinking his
Yeah.
drinks.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Mark Ruffalo, of course, being the one who's like kind of not in the news area, but like in the investigation part. I like seeing the media and the police's different responses to it and how that's different, how they work together and work apart. I think this is a movie that honestly, if I go back and watch it again, I think I will like more now that I know what it is. I think it was more like
Sure.
going into it with expectations kind of hurts it a little bit, but I still
Sure.
like the movie. Like I said at the beginning, I like all these movies. They all verge from good to great. And I will, the score I'm giving it is going to be above average, but like I really do. I think other Fincher works for me, especially Seven, do this better. But I still think because it's Fincher, it's still going to look and be presented better than a lot of other directors' work would for a movie like this. And that's what I like about it is he understands the tone of the piece. He understands the style. He understands the vibe he wants to give off. It's not overly creepy or horror esque, like you said, but it can get horror esque just by the absence of those traditional horror tropes like the jump scares and all that stuff. Like
Mhm.
the scene that scares me the most is the one where he's driving with the girl and her baby.
Mhm.
That to
Mhm.
me scares the absolute shit out of me. Because honestly, if I'm out by a lake, I don't want to say this because I'm on camera, but like dying out by a lake with your loved one, it's terrifying. It's scary. But having your child, your baby in your arms,
Mhm.
and being in this position where you feel like you're going to get murdered, could get murdered, I think is even scarier. Like the fact that you
Mhm.
have another human's life in your hands that was just introduced to the world too. It's just scary. It's so scary, and
Yeah.
it makes it I think even scarier knowing that it wasn't confirmed whether it was this guy and this guy's dead, but it wasn't confirmed, and the idea that other murders were happening that he was just taking credit for, and the fact that this Zodiac killer murderer thing could still be a thing, I don't know. I don't want to get into too many conspiracies because again, this is on camera. But I really, I think the actual true story of it all is the scariest aspect of it, and I think that always, when I was kind of in and out of the film, entertainment wise, I would at least be reeled in by the fact that this is still true story, and it would get me back in, because like I think just the aspect of it being true makes it 100 times scarier than
Yeah.
any fictional story would. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty good. It's pretty good, and I do want to revisit it. I know I talked more about the negatives, but I think it does have a lot of strengths too. So
No, yeah, I
Kelsey,
agree.
what do you rate this one?
I gave Zodiac a 7.5 out of 10.
Oh, okay. So you're not as far off as I thought. I gave it a 6 out of 10. Like above
Okay.
average. If 5 is
Yeah.
average, I think it's definitely above average. It's just not. It's not my favorite rom com like 13 going on 30. It's not a rom com at all.
No,
It's barely
absolutely
any
not.
romance and no
If
comedy
if
whatsoever.
you're
So
looking for a rom-com, definitely don't turn to
yeah,
Zodiac.
it's
You'll
so
be
different.
disappointed.
Yeah, it's so different. But that's all right, because now we got a movie that is kind of dramatic and comedic, and it is all right because it's the kids are all right. Man, I
Mhm.
effed up that segue, but
No,
um
but it was good. It was still good.
I've been playing that segue for a while.
Okay.
AKA the last 30 seconds. So 2010, Kids Are All Right. This is his first Oscar nomination. He hasn't won one yet, which is sad. But his first of three, followed by Foxcatcher and, of course, Spotlight, which won Best Picture. But Kelsey, tell us a little summary on Mark Ruffalo's first Oscar nominated performance, The Kids Are All Right.
All right. The Kids Are All Right came out in
I
2010. Oh,
love how your
I
response was all
just
right. See, you
didn't
subconsciously segued
see.
yourself. Good job.
You just oh god, there it was.
Uh,
I was hoping you were gonna say this director's name, Dill, because I don't know.
oh,
Lisa Cholodenko?
yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yep.
I tried my best.
Yep.
All right, here's the
Who
summary.
I will mention is, I believe, an openly gay woman. So good for that.
Oh,
Good for
good.
realism.
Wow, 2010. Good for you. Would never have expected that. So, Laser and Joni are the children of moms Jules and Nick, but when Joni turns 18, both kids get curious about who the man who was their spur who okay. What?
They want to find out who their sperm donor is. Yeah.
Yeah, they get curious about who the man who donated sperm to their mothers, allowing for them to exist.
Yeah. And they do meet him, and they follow up with him, and the sperm donor is none other than Mark Ruffalo
Mark
there.
Ruffalo.
Um, wow. I just watched this again for, I think, the third time. I I really enjoy this movie. I think it's because you expect it to be one thing, and then it ends up being another thing. You
Mhm.
kind of expect it to be about the kids bonding with this dad, and to an extent it is, but I think it's more about these mothers' relationships when a new person is brought into their kid's life as their kid oldest is going to college. I mean, it's very real, and I think that's what's so interesting about this film, is just how real it is and what it has to say about relationships and relationships with sperm donors or surrogates and all that stuff, like, because that is a real thing. I mean, like, this is their biological dad, and he exists, and he exists in their town, and they just don't
Mhm.
even know who he is until she turns 18, or she's 18. She can call. Uh, First off, also the kids' names, I love it. Joni named after Joni Mitchell, and then Laser. What a cool name! I love it. But yeah, Kelsey, was this a first watch for you?
This was the first watch for me, Dale,
Oh,
and I
what do you think?
we have a Marvel actor in this movie other than Mark Ruffalo, and
Yeah,
it is
oh,
Annette
yes,
Bening.
it is. She is. I forgot
And
to mention it. Yeah, Supreme Intelligence herself.
absolutely, Captain Marvel.
Yeah.
Um, so yes, this was a first time watch for me. And it was very reminiscent of me of Short Term 12, the movie that we watched
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
for Brie Larson, a
Yeah,
very like
very
slice of
indie
life
style. Yeah.
film.
Mhm,
And no, but it was still yeah, you expect it to go one way and then it goes another. And
mhm.
I love this one. I mean, I don't want to say this one's my favorite. Spoiler alert, I gave this one the lower score, but
Oh, okay.
um I love this one because Mark Ruffalo is such a presence in this movie, from like compared to the other two that we
Mhm.
watched.
This is the biggest
He
role of the 3, I
like
think. Yeah. Mhm.
he's in it, and it's like, he is the father, but he's also just like this. like charactery guy. He works with like a produce like co-op. He's very
Yeah,
like
his kitchen he
environmentally
runs, yeah.
friendly. Like
Mhm.
he's like, oh,
Sleeping
I
with
compost
coworkers, riding a
and
motorcycle.
yeah. He's just like this, like, this guy that like isn't tied down to anything, so he can kind of just like live his life the way that he
Mhm.
wants. And it's very he's a complete contrast to one of the mothers, Annette Bening's character, who plays Nick. And because she's very straight laced, she's a doctor, like, very straight edge, type A personality, whereas like her partner Jules, played
Jules,
by
yeah.
Julianne Moore, is kind of more of a free spirit, like Paul, Mark Ruffalo's
Yeah.
character.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I love how, yeah, like I said,
ooh.
it's more about the mothers than the kids, because it becomes a love triangle, and that's not
Hmm.
something I hate cheating in movies, like, I think it makes characters very irredeemable, but in
Sure.
this movie, you're supposed to find Paul irredeemable, because I think this movie is about the false hopes we give ourselves, and the idea that in the moment in the beginning it's really nice to have this fresh presence, this guy who has no cares in the world, this guy who is his own free spirit around, but in the end it ends up being the thing that almost breaks his family apart, not because
Hmm.
he's stealing the attention away from the kids, because we see in this dinner scene that Annette Bening's character Nick does come around to Paul, because she realizes he likes the same music as me.
Hmm.
We connect on other levels. He likes the same wine as me. He makes a great medium rare steak. But then, it's the relationship. It's him sleeping with Jules that gets to Nick, and that's what almost breaks up the family apart. So like,
Yeah.
I think if that movie was just the first half without the cheating, and it's just about Annette Bening learning to come to terms with the fact that this guy's in her kid's life, that could be a very sweet movie. But then it's the extra layer of no, but it's about him coming into the women's lives that ends up being
Mm.
what changes this family, and ends up being the thing that almost breaks them apart, and ends up making you see that Paul, despite being probably a fine dude on his own, is just not the guy that everyone hoped he would be. And
Yeah.
in that last moment when he comes to apologize and she kind of shuts the door in his face, I think it's worthy and justified, because as much as I love Mark Ruffalo, I think it's important to say that you don't necessarily need to keep people in your life that are going to hurt you and harm you at this extent. There can be forgiveness, and I think with Jules we see that side of forgiveness. I think Jules and Paul, one gets forgiveness, one doesn't, and I think both make sense, because like Jules, it makes sense why she's ultimately forgiven and why things are kind of okay at the end. Whereas Paul, they've only known him for a short while, so like I don't feel as bad when he screws things up, especially because like
Hmm.
if you really did love these kids and wanted to be there for them first and foremost, you would never sleep with their mom. Like, I just think
Right.
that's common sense. So I think
Yeah.
it was almost putting himself above the kids, and that's why I think it goes to show that Nick and Jules are the right parents for these kids. It just brings up so many complex things like that. Like, and some people might have their different takes. Some people might feel bad for Paul and feel like, well, Paul and Jules should be together because they, like you said, do share a lot of commonalities. And it's not specifically stated whether Jules is bi or lesbian, but she's in a relationship with both Annette Bening and Mark Ruffalo in this to some extent.
Hmm.
But like I personally took away the like, I think Paul fucked up, and good that he's out of the picture now, and it's all about this family. But like, some people might feel bad for him, and feel like he deserved more of a shot, and see Annette Bening more as a villain. I don't really. But I'd love to get
Mm.
your take. Like where do you fall on all this? Like, because it is a very
Yeah.
complex movie. Kind of like 13 going to 30. It's like on the surface, it's not that deep, but then when you look deeper into it, it's like it's pretty deep.
Yeah.
Because it deals with so much about like just parenting, and not abandonment, but the idea of like having someone come back into your life who has not been present, and what that brings, and the responsibilities that brings as well.
Yeah, Dale. I mean, it's very interesting because I feel like there is no clear-cut antagonist in this
Yeah,
film because, you know, it's easy to just blame Paul because he, came and like wreaked havoc on their lives, like was a wrecking balls to their relationship. But at the end of the day, like Jules was the one who cheated,
true, true.
and she's the one that's going to have to make this right. And it was like completely what you said. Like as soon as the cheating started happening, like I was more upset for the kids. And when the kids found
Right.
out, and Joni calls Paul and is like, "What? How could you do this?" Like
Right.
like I was the one who brought you into my family's life, and like this
Mm,
is how you think you like you're gonna treat us now. Like there's got to be some layer of now that Joni's dealing with, like
mhm.
taking responsibility for what happened between her moms, and like almost blaming herself, making herself at fault here. But at a certain, I'm like, I really wanted to just like really hate Julianne Moore's character because like
Right.
she was the big bad cheater, whatever. But at the end of the day, like I don't know, she just gives such an endearing performance that I'm
Yeah.
like I kind of don't hate Jules
Mhm.
either.
I
And it's
agree. I
easy,
agree. Yeah, I
and
don't hate Jules at the end of this, and I think that's
yeah,
good because if the movie made it so overt that you had like that you couldn't not hate Jules, I think it would be a pretty shitty movie because what is it trying to say then? You know what I mean?
yeah. And for me, at the end of the day, like the character who needed to go through the most growth and I feel like have kind of more of an arc was Annette Bening's character because
Nick,
she
yeah.
was she was really like trying to like stick to her guns the whole time. She was always like, taking like a more restrictive, more
Mhm.
like
She was the bad
punishment
cop
first
to the
side.
good cop, yeah,
Right.
yeah,
To,
as a parent.
raising their kids. And as we saw throughout the film, it's like that really was not like the tactic she needs to be going about, like parenting Joni, because, Joni has her big speech at the end where it's like, I did everything you wanted me to do. I got straight A's. I didn't do anything wrong throughout my entire like high school life. Like, I've been your perfect child. Like, don't be mad at me right now for like being drunk or whatever. Like, you know what
Mhm.
I mean? So it's kind of like when you, at a certain point, when you put too many boundaries and too many restrictions around your kids, like that's only going to make them want to rebel more. And it
Yeah.
was that lesson that I was like, we're like at the end when she rides the motorcycle with Paul and Joni and not Joni. Joni's riding the motorcycle with Paul, but Nick is like, what the hell is going on? Like Joni knows that this is something that I never wanted for her. Like you shouldn't have allowed my daughter to do this. And Paul's just trying to give her some friendly advice, like, hey, maybe you should ease up a little and she
Mm,
might come around. And Paul's totally right. But like,
right.
yes, I get it. Like it wasn't his place to like give parenting advice by any means, but it's like that's kind of what Nick needed to hear. Maybe not necessarily coming from Paul, but I was like, she just felt like the toughest like nut to crack for me. And for me, like I don't want to say that she was the main antagonist because at the end of the day, she's the one that is betrayed. But
Well,
I
I
was
think it's
like,
different
oh
per character because, like,
yeah,
I think for Jules, the main antagonist is herself. I think for
sure,
Paul, the main antagonist is Nick, and for Nick, the main antagonist is Paul. And I think
yeah,
that's what's so interesting, and that's the perfect love triangle because every character has their own antagonist, and I think Jules is probably the most profound because it's her own self doubt and her own. But then again, also Nick never took her career seriously, whereas Paul did, and that's something that
right.
she latches onto, and it
That's
goes to
another thing.
it's like, does she cheat because she thinks Paul is like she likes Paul, or is it just because Paul gives her what Nick doesn't? And I think that's also what's very
Mm,
interesting. And
yeah,
it doesn't
yeah,
justify Julianne Moore's character, but I think it makes it easier for her to be redeemed than Paul because Paul, the whole time you want him to, you're just like, but you just met your kids and you're fucking it up, dude. Come on, because he knows
yeah,
it's wrong,
yeah,
and that's why I think it's harder to redeem Paul because Jules, it's almost
yeah.
like she needed, not that she needed to go through this because no one needs to cheat, but it's like she almost this experience changed her for the better. Whereas Paul, I think it changed. Might have changed him for the better because now he won't ever do it. But again, how many other sperm donor parents is he going to meet their kids and you have this opportunity for? And it's almost like he fucked up this one chance, and I think for him, it's like he doesn't get another chance because this is it. Like now they're in and out in their lives, and now they're out, and he can try to reconnect maybe with got Joni when she goes to college, maybe. But it seems like the kids don't want to hear from him
Yeah.
either, and it's like interesting how like she uses this experience to say I messed up, and this is what I'm going to do better, whereas he says I messed up, but there's no one to kind of do better to and for. And
Mm,
that's what's kind of ultimately sad about Paul's story and why this is such a good movie, I think, because it layers these characters to where now even talking about it, I feel for Paul. And 10 minutes ago, I was like, Paul sucks. But now I'm like,
yeah.
but I kind of feel for Paul in that sense. It's like, because he did have a connection with these kids. You can see that. And I love when she talks about the fact that, like, you have Laser's smile, like the same little laugh thing you do, and
Yeah,
stuff like
yeah,
that. Like
yeah.
I love those moments where he's with the kids. You know, he's driving on the motorcycle with Joni, and he's, you know, filming those videos with Laser of his friend who sucks. Just,
Clay.
you know, Clay
Dude
jumping off the roof, and
sucks.
Clay sucks. Clay sucks.
Clay
Clay
sucks.
is
Clay's
Clay's the
the
antagonist.
antagonist.
Yeah, there we go. Because
Fuck
honestly,
Clay.
that's another thing. Yeah, and I wish they went a little further into Joni's friends, because I feel like they try to make that a plot point and then kind of just like fizzle it. It doesn't really
Oh,
have much
yeah,
of
yeah, yeah.
an impact, but I think this is really good, and I like what you said about Short Term 12. It's presented in a very laid back style that again fits Mark Ruffalo really well, because he is so laid back. But like you said, also he's so different in all these movies, but it's the same vibe in terms of just the way he goes about it, which makes it all the more fascinating. Like it's the same energy that he's giving to Zodiac and 13 Going on 30, but it's a totally different edge, if that makes sense. Like different, same
Yeah.
energy, different edge, and I really like that. I think he's really good in this role. You kind of love him, and then you kind of hate him, and I think that's the goal. You want to, because there are things about him that are worth admiring. The fact that he is so accepting of Jules' job, and the fact that he does love these kids and wants to give them more freedoms and let kids be
Mhm.
kids.
Mhm.
And let them be adults when they want to do adult things when they are adults, when she's 18. But also he's not a parent. He's never been a parent. And I think that's
Yeah.
something also that this film teaches well, is that the people, you know, that parents deserve a lot of credit because it's
Yes.
hard. And I think that's why Annette Bening's character is not just this flat out villain, because
Yeah.
she, of all people, you realize how hard it is to parent, and I think she succeeds in conveying that message too. I think these performances are also good. Like even the kids, I think Josh Hutcherson's really good. This is pre-Hunger Games. Josh
Yeah.
Hutcherson. This is Mia Wasikowska, the same year as Alice in Wonderland, so she's still yet to get her big break. But like,
Oh,
you know,
wow.
really really good performances from everyone, all five of the leads. So yeah, I really like this one.
Yeah, and I
Any other
love
thoughts? Yeah.
yeah, and I just love how it all comes full circle at the end. It ends on Joni's moving day to college, and, you
Hmm.
know, Dill and I can both relate to that kind of like, "All right, this is kinda it now," and she has this heartbreaking moment where she thinks that her entire family just
Just
left
left. Yeah.
because without saying goodbye,
Yeah.
and it's because, like, you know, she's kind of been, a little bit bumping heads a lot with, like, her and her family throughout the last summer before she leaves, so it's like, "Oh, maybe, maybe they did just leave because that's what I've been kinda asking them to do. I've been kinda asking for more space to push them away to let me do my own thing," but it's like, now that I have that, it's like, "Fuck, I'm gonna miss my family," and then, it's just it was just very relatable because I remember,
Yeah.
college moving day being a tad emotional,
I
even
gotta
though,
say,
you know
I don't think I cried at my move-in. I, no, I don't think so, because like my parents lived so close. Like I wasn't going too far, and I knew
Sure.
I was like, I think I'm coming home in 2 weeks. It's fine. But
Yeah.
movies, when they do college scenes of college kids getting dropped off to college, I sob like a baby. I don't understand it. They are the most. If you want to see Dylan cry, sit him in front of a screen, play him Kids Are Alright, play him Ladybird, give him some Toy Story 3, any scenes of kids going away to college, he will
Oh,
bawl like
man.
a little baby. And
Yeah.
I don't know why, but it's just so touching to me. And I think it's because I I am the oldest, and I think when you're the oldest, you kind of see from an older perspective your parents parenting. And I think that's what's interesting. Like I got to see, obviously my parents parented me, but I got to see my parents parent my younger brother and sister, and kind of like look at it from that lens. And I think, yeah, parents deserve a lot of credit. Parents or guardians, whoever raises you, like
Mhm.
that's a big deal. Like that's a big thing. You're basically setting someone up for success or sometimes failure. And I think just seeing my own parents and my own experience, seeing kids go to college and movies and stuff, like it's almost like it's not all about the kid, it's more about the parents, and the parents saying we did a good job with this one, and that's what gets me emotional, because like
Yeah.
in this movie especially, it's like that's what brings them back together at the end, is because they realize like we made two great kids biologically. He made two great kids, but like we raised two great kids, like we made them
Yes.
who they are for real. And
Yes.
like, and I think this movie, the really at its core, what it's saying is that the people who make you are not the people who biologically make you, but the people who make you who you are and raise you to be who you are. And like that's what that means. And um yeah, and in terms of title too, I like the title. Kids Are All Right, but it's not spelled all right. It's all right. Because in this movie, the kids say it how it is. You know, they call it how it is. Like Laser,
Mhm.
I love that scene where he's like, "Do you guys think I was gay?" Like, I think that's just so funny because it's like
Yeah.
it's funny to see two lesbian women or one lesbian woman, one bisexual woman, like treat coming out and homosexuality in such a different way than you'd see very conservative parents, but like even the most liberal parents, like they're even hesitant at first. They're like, "But we're okay with that, right?" Yeah, well, yeah, obviously, yeah. Like I just think that's so
Yeah,
funny,
yeah,
and
yeah.
it's fun to see the kids' perspective through all of it because everything they say is it's all right, it's all correct, it's their observations are all correct because
Right.
these parents honestly have more growing to do in this film than the kids do, and I just think it's so smart. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so I give this a solid like 8 out of 10. I think it's solid. I really enjoy it. It's not like one of the perfect movies I think like 13 Going on 30 is, but I actually really enjoyed it a lot more than Zodiac, just from a pure entertainment and enjoyable lens. So it's an 8 out of 10. But Kels, what'd you give this, and what are your final thoughts?
I gave this one a 6.5 out of 10.
Cool.
Just because I don't know, these movies, as you know, heartwarming and enjoyable as they are, they're never my go-to.
Mm,
Um, so as far as me recommending this to someone who, I mean, I don't know, as far as me recommending, you want to see a good Mark Ruffalo performance, you definitely watch The Kids Are All Right because he's
yeah,
just totally different, and it's just like you see him in like a totally different lens, and it's great. But
yeah,
for me, it's a 6.5 out of 10,
yeah.
and I will
Hey,
go on
all
record
above
and say
average, all above average. So
all above average for sure. And I will go on record and say that I for sure cried on my college moving day. I think I cried. Okay, I only cried because I was moving from my beach house, so my aunt was there, and she was crying, and I was like, okay, you can't cry because now I'm gonna cry. And then
yeah.
when my parents like finally left and everything was all packed and in, and it was just like, okay, bye, and I was like, bye. I just like sat in my room and was like, okay, it's just me now.
Yeah,
And
I think
like you said, Jill, I didn't go too far away either. I was still in New Jersey, so it's like
sure.
I'm just like a big old sap, I guess.
I'm trying to think if like I definitely didn't cry. You know what I think it is? It's seeing my mom cry makes me cry.
Yes.
Seeing my grandparents. So like I think I didn't see them cry, but
Okay.
when my bro I didn't drop off my brother at college, but I remember the first summer or one of the summers where him and his girlfriend Michaela came to stay with us. And at the end of the summer or whatever, he went back to Florida because he drove. You know, he had his big old truck.
Mhm.
He drove back, and I remember that um, saying goodbye. And then as soon as they pulled out of the driveway, my mom kind of turned around and was like quietly sobbing, and I lost it.
Oh,
I lost it
Becky,
because it's like
no.
because you got to remind yourself this happens every year for 4 years. You know, it's not like you're
Yeah.
just sending them away and then you don't see them for 4 years or see them ever again. Like you have to go through saying goodbye to them 4 times, unless of course they're living somewhere else for the summer. But like for my family, it was always we'd come home for the summers and go back to
Yeah.
college in September or August or whatever. But like
Yep.
I think it was like seeing my brother go wasn't sad for me. I was like, all right, see you, dude. And then but watching my mom walk back to the house crying, trying to hide it from my brother too, like very I was like, oh my god. I
Oh.
think that's what made me cry. And my sister
Yeah.
as well, because when we dropped Nina off at AMDA, I actually did move her in for that one. I helped her, and
Yeah.
we literally went out to eat afterward, and then we drove her back, and driving back, um yeah, again, my mom got emotional, and I think that's what it is seeing my parents get emotional made me emotional.
Yeah.
But mine, I didn't see my parents because I was at the college. They had left, so I didn't get to see the aftermath, the cry.
Right.
And
Right, right,
Jeff,
right.
and I've only seen Jeff cry once, and it was during Coco. Isn't that crazy?
Wow. Coco
I,
was the one. Wow, that's
He's
great.
probably cried before. I heard he cried the day I was born. That my mom
I'm
has said
sure
that's the
he
only time
did.
she's seen him cry was the day I was born. So uh, I take credit for that, but I have personally
Wow.
not seen him cry except for Coco. Sorry, Dad, I outed you. Yes, you cried
My
during Coco, and I did too. I did too. I'm not saying I didn't. I was
No,
sitting
we
there.
all cried
I,
during
yeah,
Coco. Come
I
on.
was wiping his tears with my tears. So I was like, here. Um, it was bad. It was bad. It was bad. Oh, that movie. That movie. I don't think there's any Marvel actors in there. Otherwise, I'd be on that like cake. Um, that was that movie I want to talk about all the time. That movie makes me so sad, but it's so
Yeah.
good. Have you seen Coco?
Of course, I've seen Coco.
Of course. Well, yeah, yeah.
The first time
It's a
I
good
watched, oh, I'm not gonna incriminate myself. Never
Yeah,
mind.
yeah. Don't do this right now. Mark is down there having a good old time. We don't want to ruin his vibe. So, these three movies, I don't. I mean, we've given out our rankings, but like Kelsey said, if you had to recommend one Mark Ruffalo movie, you've already given your scores on the movies themselves. As for a Mark Ruffalo movie, what would you recommend? Because you obviously, I think of your three, I think 13 Going 30 was your highest rated, or was it Zodiac? I don't remember.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it was 13 going on 30. I gave an 8. Zodiac got a 7.5, and this one got a 6.5.
All right, but which one would you recommend for if someone wanted to seek out Mark Ruffalo? If someone had only seen the MCU and was like, "I want to see that Hulk guy, not the first one, the second Hulk guy, in another thing," what would I go with?
I think you gotta watch 13 going on 30.
Really? Okay, yeah,
I think it 13
I mean,
going
I'm
on
always gonna
30,
recommend that. So yeah, I would
and
recommend that
then
too. But
the
I think
kids are all right.
for something different, I'd probably go Kids Are All Right. But like, I don't know. But then again, I could see Professor Hulk being like produce. So I don't know. Um,
Stop.
whereas
I
I
could
don't
too, actually.
I don't know if I could see Professor Hulk chowing down on some Razzle Reds. Maybe. I don't know. That was Mark Ruffalo. Peace out, Mark Ruffalo. We're gonna remove you for just a bit because we are going to talk about the next movie club, and it will not be Mark Ruffalo because we still have another week of the off season, and I don't know if we're gonna get 2 trivia matches in. If for some reason we get 2 trivia matches in by next week, we can probably air that. But we are going to be doing a movie club regardless. We are going to be doing we're going to continue along with our original core. We've done Black Panther, Spider-Man, and Captain Marvel, but of the originals, we've only done now 4 of them. We've done Iron Man, Hulk, Black Widow, and Captain America. There's 2 left, and we're going to do one of them. We're doing, because it's still kind of in theaters, we're going to be doing Mr. Chris Hemsworth, Mr. Thor himself. We decided to pick movies again. We're trying to span their careers. We didn't go with Star Trek, even though that is technically his first movie.
Mm.
We didn't want to go with that because he's only in the first scene, even though it's a great scene. Maybe Kelsey, you should watch that one scene on YouTube, just
Okay.
for a fun little bonus. But those movies that we are going to cover, because Thor was his big breakout after that. But the first big movie after Thor that he was in, 2012's The Cabin in the Woods, nice fun little
Mm.
horror movie. 2013's Rush, directed by Ron Howard, also starring Daniel Bruhl, who plays Helmut Zemo. And then we are looking at the new film on Netflix that came out this year, Spiderhead, from 2022, a movie that came out in the same summer as Thor: Love and Thunder, very fresh, and a movie that came out with the same director as Top Gun Maverick, which is the biggest movie of the summer in terms of money and box office, and in
Mm.
my opinion, quality. So we are going to be looking at that, also starring Miles Teller. So he's in 2 Joseph Kosinski movies, which is very interesting.
Wow.
But we'll be looking at Cabin in the Woods, Rush, and Spiderhead next week, and we're looking forward to it. Kelsey, any last thoughts as we wrap up Ruffalo and move on to Hemsworth? And what are your socials? Let's plug them.
You know, Dill, I realized I forgot to do this because I put it at the end of my notes app, but I did start saying how our actors got into acting for these little movie clubs. So
Ooh,
really quick
tell us.
at the
Yes,
end
tell it.
here.
Wait, let me bring him back. Let me bring him back.
Yeah, bring
Where
it
are you,
back.
Mark?
Bring it back.
Here I am. I'm Mark
There
Ruffalo.
you are.
I don't know why it's starting to sound a little too much like a previous president, and I don't want that to happen. But
Yeah, no, no,
it's the
no.
New
Because
York thing. It's the New York thing. But like, you know what I'm talking about, Mark Ruffalo. He's very laid back.
no, he's yeah, it's he's very like breathy when he talks. So
Oh, you
I get
named
what
that
you're
the
doing here.
Joni Mitchell. You named that the Joni Mitchell. That's cool.
But he's absolutely the exact opposite of every single
Hey, don't
way.
say his name. Hey, this is my
Sorry.
channel. I don't want you to say his name on
Sorry.
my
Bleep it
channel.
out.
Sorry.
Bleep it out. Do like a beep,
No, I
a
don't have the
black
time.
bar.
Fine, I'll do it. I'll do it. I'll bleep it out. I don't care. I'll bleep
But
it out.
anyway, so Mark Ruffalo started acting in his teen years. He performed at the Patriot Playhouse in Virginia Beach, Virginia. Then him and his family moved to San Diego and later LA. Sorry, I was just fixing my skirt. Um,
Move to San Francisco.
he
It's
moved
just
to
very funny. It looked like you were
Did I
like
say San
dancing
Francisco? I
or
meant
something.
San
I don't know.
Diego.
I was like, what is she doing? Is this like a San Francisco dance I don't know about?
He moved to San Diego, not San Francisco.
Either
Um,
way.
and then he moved to LA. He took classes at the Stella Adler Conservatory, and
Oh,
his first
cool.
kind of big break into acting was being in part of the original cast of the play by Kenneth
Lonergan.
Longren.
Lonergan.
Lonergan?
Kenneth Lonergan.
Lonergan. There you go. Kenneth Lonergan. This is our youth.
Yeah.
And through knowing Kenneth, he got a role in the movie You Can Count on Me, which was
Very cool.
Oscar nominated.
Maybe he wasn't, but it might have been.
He wasn't, but I think the movie was. That's what it said on Wikipedia.
I will tell you in just a sec. Why don't you tell us about your social
Also,
media, and I will find
I
that.
looked at the cast of This Is Our Youth, the play, and across the board, it is freaking star-studded. Jake Gyllenhaal was in it at a certain point, another Marvel actor, Michael Cera. All
Mhm.
kinds of actors were in that play.
It's a good play. I'm a big Lonergan fan. Like Lonergan, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Manchester by the Sea with Casey Affleck. He wrote and directed that. He also wrote Lobby Hero, which was I believe I don't want to. Maybe it was Chris Evans. Yes, the one that Chris Evans and Brian Tyree Henry were on Broadway.
Oh, yes.
The one where he grew the stash out. Yeah,
Yes,
Lobby
yes,
Hero.
yes.
He wrote that as well. So like, This Is Our Youth and Lobby Hero and Manchester by the Sea are like his big things. But I'm a big Kenneth Lonergan fan. Yes, to confirm, it was nominated for 2 Academy Awards. Laura Linney from Ozark was nominated for Best Actress, and then it was up for Best Original Screenplay for Lonergan, which was You Can Count on Me, which I had never heard of. So maybe if we revisit Ruffalo, we'll have to watch that.
Perhaps. But here's where you can find me in the meantime. You can find me on Instagram at Kelsey A. Kilpatrick. You can follow me on TikTok at Cause13, or you can subscribe to my YouTube channel, Cause Productions.
And if you want to check us out on video, you can head to the Dill Pickle Movie Network. If you're already here, hi, you've seen our faces. But if you're listening on podcast, thank you. Give us a 5-star review. I am on a quest, which I haven't talked about on this channel, but I'm on a quest to become Rotten Tomatoes certified in the next 2 years. That's my deadline. I'm giving myself 2 years because the next application process is March of 2023.
How can we do that for you, Dill? How can I help you?
In order to do that, I need to pull up the parameters, but the channel itself, and this is the big stretch that might be difficult, but the channel itself, I think needs a certain amount of subscribers that I know I'm far away from getting, but like if this takes off, I'm hoping something will happen, where I could get that certification, but you need at least 2 years of active content, and then you need hold on, I'm getting the guidelines. Okay, a minimum. This is going to be tough, but 30,000 subscribers on a video publishing platform. So that's a long ways away. But
I'll just
2
make
years
30,000 Gmail accounts and subscribe to you.
That's two.
Every time I make a new Gmail, I subscribe to you, Dill.
Well,
I'm trying to bump your numbers.
Yeah, you need a minimum of 2 years. So in February, I believe, or February or March of 2023 will be 2 years of content. But then I also need 30,000 subscribers. Or in order to get certified through podcast, we need to have put out podcasts for 2 years, publish at least 4 episodes a month, which we do. And it needs at least 200 ratings on Apple Podcasts with a minimum score of 4 stars. So this is where you all come in if you're listening. The subscribers on YouTube, I think, might take a little while. But if you can get a minimum of 4-star review, if you feel like we're worthy of 4 stars or even 5 stars, 5 stars helps even more. Let us know. Give us a little podcast review. Even if you're watching on YouTube, go to the podcast feed, subscribe to the podcast, and give us a minimum score of 4 stars if you think we're worthy of it. If we think we're worthy of holding that hammer. And then we also need a social media presence, which I believe I have. But that is a goal, and I'm also going to. Spoiler alert, by the end of the year, start up the Dill Pickle podcast, which is going to be all my videos that I have on YouTube in podcast form. So there will be 2 podcast feeds. Marvel-ous Movie Mondays will be its own podcast. And then we'll have the Dill Pickle podcast, which is going to have Draft Day, Picture This, Frame Rec, Great American Film Off, Recipe for Reality, and all my reviews and lists. All of those 7 things are going to be in the Dill Pickle podcast. So when a video comes up on YouTube, there will also be an audio version, because I know some people have said, I like listening to you in the car, but I hate ads, and I don't like the fact that I have to keep my phone open for YouTube to watch it, and I don't want anyone to pay the obscene amount for premium. So I was like, hey, let's make it on the go, especially because Picture This is usually averages on 1.5 to 2 hours. This show's long, and that's why I love it on podcast form, but this will be its own podcast because I don't want to merge the worlds. This is doing well on its own in terms of I want this to grow on its own. because this was a podcast first and foremost. But the other stuff I will have available on podcast form by the end of the year. I'm going to start backlogging a bunch of stuff, and then once it's all up, I'm going to drop it all at once so you guys can see it. But yeah, if we get like a bunch of reviews on this podcast and that podcast, once that's available, I'm hoping to become Rotten Tomatoes certified. That's my end goal for 2 years. So 2024 is my goal for that. It's a long-term goal because I think it's going to take some time, but I'm going to try my best. Early next year, I'm planning a 24-hour subathon, which is basically where I'm going to be streaming for 24 straight hours and hoping to get more subscriptions and likes and stuff. It's a way I've seen
Whoa.
a lot of other creators try to get viewership and all that on Twitch. I know YouTube limits it to 12 hours, so it's going to be 2 videos, an AM and a PM, or a day shift and a night shift, if you will. But I have plans for that day, which I'm very excited for. So a lot of fun stuff planned for the future of this channel, but I really want this to start taking off in the next few years. Really give our creators, not just myself, but Kelsey, Matt, Chad, Crosby, Zach, give them all of the attention they deserve. So that is the end goal for 2024, is to hopefully have enough subscribers on here, have enough listeners and reviews on the podcast to become Rotten Tomatoes certified, or at least eligible to apply. Whoa, I hit my mic. Eligible to apply for certification. I know that was a long spiel, but I think it's important because I want you guys to get up there, liking, commenting, and subscribing. Commenting actually is the number one thing that drives visibility on YouTube. So help us out,
Mm.
like and comment. Commenting is great, even if it's like a great job. Or for this one, if you want to tell us what you thought of these films or some of your favorite Ruffalo films, please let us know down below. But obviously, subscriptions really matter. But in terms of visibility, comments really do go a long way, and likes, of course. So thank you guys so much for watching. I know that was a long spiel, but we got to get to the business nitty gritty because I do want more and more people to see this and view this, and we want to start being able to give Kelsey money for this as well, because she devotes so much of her time. And I know she said it, she's only does it for the love of it, but we want to start monetizing this podcast as soon as possible. So thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.